Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and today in this video I'm gonna share with you how to take notes, and I will provide you 10 tips that I found personally useful and effective if you want to have a legible and clean notes. So without further ado, let's get into it. Oh, and by the way, I want to confirm first is that all the tips here I've taken from a video called How I Take Notes of Study T. So like if you want to learn more about her channel and want to just discover more about her channel, because personally I really love Study T, which is a YouTube channel. She has a lot of study tips and tricks, and in this channel I've already made a lot of videos based on her ideas. So if you also want to learn more about them, I will put the link in the description box below. So now let's get into our video. So today is the podcast, so I can share with you my notes. So I just tell you 10 tips and you can yourself try it out to see the efficiency, whether it works for you or not. Alright, so tip number 1, which is quite not relevant to taking notes yet, but I think it's super important to do it. It is keep a separate notebook for all of your subjects. Well, personally, I see that many of you guys want to save up money and don't want to waste some money for notebooks and for textbook, because notebooks generally are very expensive. So you just keep a notebook and write down whatever in lecture, 12 subjects in a notebook. I think that is kind of messy, and whenever you want to revise, it's really challenging to find down which subject you want to revise and to look for. So I highly recommend you guys separating each subject into each separate notebook. If you have 12 subjects, then prepare for yourself 12 notebooks. And I also recommend you buying some additional notebooks for questions, practice, and some practice problems, so that you will understand more about the concept and the idea. So for example, in my country, I'm going to go to the 8th grade this year, so I have 12 subjects. I decided to buy 24 notebooks. 12 notebooks first is for taking notes and for making notes in the lecture, and the 12 books is for doing some exercise and some questions, problems, so that I will reinforce my concept. And tip number 2 is color code your notes based on chapters or topics. So take for example, if you learn biology and we learn about the human body first, you use separate chapters for separate highlighters. So for example, human body you use for green, and then we learn about topic number 2 about parts of human body. We can use color green, or depends on your own. So that way, whenever you wanna revise just for a topic and you wanna learn all the lessons and the lessons and the things in that topic, you just based on that color and then find it more easier. Tip number 3 is use color pen to make important terms stand out. For example, if you write down the long definition and if you don't categorize which is the important terms, it may be very hard and difficult to learn by heart and to memorize this long definition. So I highly recommend you guys using a color pen. For example, you can use pink, use blue, whatever, to make this important term stand out. And like personally, I think that when you are changing between your pens and that color pen, it will help you to memorize better. And you can also make a list of some important key terms of that chapter at the end of the notebook. For example, you write down the key terms for the title, and you can write down some important terms at that chapter following the formula, like important term number 1, some definition and explanation for that term, and an example, so that you will reinforce your understanding about that term. it's may it's like a lifesaver and life-changing for me whenever I want to revise quickly for a test, or my teacher just call it to prepare for a test. I definitely need to revise that key terms. And tip number 4 is use more abbreviation and symbols to boost the process of note taking. So, like, I see that many of you guys avoid using abbreviation and symbols because you are afraid of like making your notes become like not understandable and you can't understand what you're writing. But believe me, using more abbreviation, like for example, you use the word example, you can write down it in the abbreviation form, EX, the same way with so on, you can use etc, etc. That way you will boost the process of note taking and you can write note more faster and easier. But I have a little reminder for you. If you use a lot of abbreviation and symbols for your notes, you definitely need to make a list of the definition and the full letter of that abbreviation so that when you want to revise, you definitely need to understand what that stands for so you don't get confused and then you will like can understand what your note is about. So remember so. And tip number 5 is start sentences. So this tip I learned from Study T and she explained to me really easy. Start sentences means like step number 1, you skim through the whole chapter and then you read each paragraph thoroughly one by one in that chapter. After that, you will make a sentence summary, just a sentence, to summarize each paragraph. You can also use bullet point if you want to add an additional information. But to be honest, I think that you should just include the main point of that paragraph in one sentence. That way you will know exactly how to summarize and make a brief summary of the chapter. Whenever you want to revise and review it quickly, just open the summary you have made before for each paragraph and it will become much easier. And number 6 is use more diagrams. So I see that many of you guys just write down words, sentences, paragraphs, make your notebook become really boring, and whenever you just open your notebooks and see tons and tons of words like this, you will not in the mood to study at all. So to make your notebooks become more appealing and interesting to look at, make more diagrams, especially when you're studying in biology or chemistry or math. Write drawing diagrams. So in lecture, I don't really recommend you writing diagrams at the very moment when you're listening to lecture because you don't have so much time and maybe your lecturer or your professor speaks really quickly, so you have to save time for later. So I recommend you just draw a rough draft of diagram, and then when you come back home, you open your notebook and then you write it down with colors, and then write it down with colors. Okay guys, so I'm so sorry because my mom have just like yelled at someone and then it's really interrupt my podcast. I've just paused the video and then told my mom to turn down her voice a little bit. Anyway, so I've told you that you draw just a draft of your diagram and then you come back home, you open your next book and then you add some color in it to make it more vivid and to more appealing to look at. Remember that. It's also very easier to understand than just write down words after words. And you can also add some additional information around your diagram to explain what this process is about or what this evolution is about. If you're maybe drawing a diagram about the evolution of the animal, you can write down some diagrams, you can add some additional information about that kind of animals, and you can draw some animals as well to make your notebook just become more aesthetic to look at. But don't just focus on your diagram too much. Alright? And tip number 7 is use different highlighters for different aspects of your notes. So now, this is my favorite part of taking notes, is that I am allowed to use different highlighters for different things and different information on my notes. Well, take for example, if you want to summarize, you write down the paragraph of a summarize, you use the pink color. For paraphrase, you use the blue color. For answer a question that your teacher told you to do, you can use the green color. And to revise, you can use the yellow color. And the same way with understand and research, you can use purple as well. So that's way you will become more like a little bit prepared when you want to revise. Just open your notebook and then find the exact color you want to review. If you want to review the answer of a specific question, you can find the color green to do that. That's so much like convenient than just open your book and you like get lost and can know what exactly you want to revise. This is so annoying. For example, if you open your notebook and then you can like identify which part is questions, which part is revise, which part you need to do the summaries. That's really annoying me. So I definitely need to make highlighters to my notebooks. And tip number 8 is use sticky notes to write down additional information or something like questions, some practice questions you are unable to understand about the concept you have just learned on your sticky notes, and then you can stick it on your notebook. It's so convenient. When you open your notebook and you came across that sticky note, you can immediately ask your teacher once you come back home. Or you can also write down some teachers' comments or reminders of them for about that new concept. Maybe they told you that this is the most important topic of the semester. You definitely have to revise it for your exam because it may come up. You can write down the sticky notes to remind you later. Or you can even write out some quotes, the test dates, and also draw a diagram as well if you don't have enough space to draw a diagram, using a sticky notes to do it. So that's number 8. And number 9 is use the bottom of the page too wisely. So I see that many of you guys like just write down whatever you want, don't really categorize into sections. Remember, when you're writing down lecture, just leave and skip a little bit of space at the bottom of the page. You have two purposes to do that. First is to make a brief summary of the important ideas or concepts. It just need to contain some important ideas or concepts you need to remember through the whole idea. You don't need to write down every single details or information, because instead of a summary, it may become a paragraph or become an essay. It's just some important points and ideas. Or you can even take advantage of that very bottom of the page to write down some practice questions for your notes, maybe from your textbooks, from the internet, or some amazing and interesting questions you come across that you may think that is relevant to your notes. You can also write down at the bottom of the page as well. And last but not least, the last tip I want to tell you in this video is leave some space in the margin to add information later, details in the left hand of your notes. This is like kind of the Cornell method note taking, and I can see that it's really effective in fiction, especially if you want to do summary, have keywords in just one page. Remember to check out the Cornell method note taking if you haven't tried out before. Anyway, so you leave a little bit of your space in the left hand side of your paper and then write down all the keywords. Or if you want some if you want to add some further information, keyword examples, you can also add in that space to understand more and to just understand more about the concept. So I think that's all about the 10 tips I want to share with you in this video. So before we ramp up, I will summarize with you 10 tips. First tip is to keep a separate notebook for all of your subject, and you can also buy some additional notebooks for questions or practice problems. Number 2 is color code your notes based on chapters or topics. Number 3 is use color pen to make important points, terms stand out. And you can also have a list of important key terms at the end of the notebook. It's a life changer for me. Number 4 is use as much abbreviation and symbols as possible to boost the process of note taking. And remember that it must be understandable for you. You can write down some more information about that abbreviation if you're afraid that you will forget later when you want to revise or review. Tip number 5 is start sentences. Step number 1 is skim through the whole chapter. Step number 2 is read each paragraph thoroughly one by one, and then make a sentence summary. Use bullet point if you want to add some additional information. Tip number 6 is use diagrams. You can draw a diagram after taking notes to make your notes become more static, appealing to look at, and to add some color. It's very fun. Number 7 is use different highlighters for different aspects of your notes, as I've mentioned later. Number 8 is use sticky notes to write additional information if you don't have enough space, or some another purposes like questions, teachers' comments, quote, test dates, diagram. Number 9 is use the bottom of the page to make a brief summary of some important ideas of the notes or some practice questions you think is relevant to your topic. And number 10 is leave some space in the margin to add information, keywords, further examples later, and more details about that topic. And thank you so much for watching about my podcast. If you have further questions or want to ask me about how to take notes, feel free to comment down below and I'll make sure to reply to you. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.